Is anybody saying anything?
Hi. Hello. Sorry, I was muted before. So it is 6:39. Welcome to the May 14th meeting of CB2's Land Use and Housing Committee. I am Eugene Yu, the chair of the Land Use Committee. With me is
Katie Bordenaro, co-chair, vice chair.
And if we go around, introduce committee members.
Committee member, board member.
Charles Fernandez, committee member, board member.
Anita Brandt, board member.
Donna Radford, committee member.
And then online.
Hi, Stella Fitzgerald, board member, committee member.
Hi, Stella.
Hi, Frederica Siegel, committee member.
Nice. Great, thank you. Okay.
Knowledge gallery.
Oh, and also we have with us the chair of CB2, Valerie De La Rosa.
Yes, Carter.
We also have Carter Booth. Introduce herself, Carter.
Carter.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bo said he'll be late.
Okay.
So
And David?
David, I haven't heard from. Okay. All right. So we'll start with the agenda items. We have three planned agenda items. The first is a discussion on Gansevoort Square. So this is a specific request that we received from EDC to give comments on their site control and security plan. What this is a document that lays out what type of security controls, fencing, that type of issues, access for the site in between when the meatpackers will vacate, which is currently planned for July 1st, up until the groundbreaking for the development, which would be, they're estimating approximately an 18-month timeline. We asked for a copy of a draft site control and security plan in time for this meeting. EDC responded that they were unable to provide us with one for this meeting. And I believe, Katie, do you recall the dates that they have? I don't think any of the dates that they had for the documents were going to line up with our meeting schedules.
Maybe May 12th, which is already passed. Everything was before.
Yeah. But I think there's two parts of this. First is the site control and security plan. And the second is a discussion about the activation of the site, which is the programming for any temporary uses of the site. But if we could start with the first item, which is the site control and security plan, wanted to just have a discussion with the committee to see, first of all, is this something that we wanted to comment on? I think Katie and I have discussed this, and for some of the other projects in the area, I don't believe that in recent memory we've had to comment on whatever agency has the use of the site. For example, 388 Hudson, HPD never asked us for any comments on how they were going to secure the site. I think they did notify us at one point that they were going to store equipment. I think it was like sanitation equipment for snow removal.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really for comment. That was just a notification to us.
I think it really depends on the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Because I remember when we worked on the building on Charlton Street,
Yes.
and that we were involved to the point of what time the deliveries were the trucks idled and how many, it just got into a level of detail to help the
Right.
residents.
Right. And
So that might be sort of a similar thing.
that's similar, I think, for that one, because that was also something we remember. That was like, I think, a year ago. They had come to us and they had asked for, I think, a variance because they wanted to have extended hours,
Wanted to
bring,
do it, work
That's
nights
fine.
and
they wanted to
weekends
work,
or
I think,
something,
nights.
ostensibly to
weekends.
speed it up.
That's
Right.
But this might be an opportunity for us to put in a few good neighbor
Mhm,
policies that we expect,
mhm.
whether it's idling trucks, because those things are,
But this is, it's not gonna be, it's not gonna be for any of the construction. It's gonna be the period up to construction.
and what is that gonna
So
do?
I'll tell you what they're going to do. It's about a year and a half, over a year. And they
Yeah.
are not going to put up a chain link fence. They're going to put plywood
Right.
all around three sides. They have to keep, there's a gate sort of beside the Whitney where the High Line has access, which is mostly open now. So if you walk by, it's generally open, but that's going to be, I think it's going to be, have a security guard there or something because they don't want
24 hours
anybody in the
security.
donut because the buildings are empty.
Well,
They
no,
have hazardous materials. So,
well, what's the code require? I think that's our minimum there. I would
oh,
go
that's
with
good.
that.
Okay, I like that.
That's whatever that,
Code
If
requirement.
it's code, why, there's nothing to comment on.
That's sort of the question,
Yeah.
is, as a
But
land
we
use
did-
committee, do we need to comment on
Well, we
this?
were asked as a board, if I remember correctly, the same questions for the Dapolito Center. And it may not have been this committee, but I recall that they asked us about what we wanted to see while that was closed.
That was the parks, I think it was.
Maybe, or maybe it's a
joint.
joint meeting. They asked, but
Yeah.
there was a conversation about whatever it is, did we have any comments? And I'm not sure we had much because it seemed fairly,
Fairly
like every
straightforward.
other, make sure there's enough lighting, make sure, it's safe.
Make sure
it's
people don't
cleaned
get,
up.
don't wander on
Right.
the site.
And I think that in this case, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it would seem that the meatpacking bed is right there, so they're probably already monitoring like
Right.
graffiti and stuff like that, and they may have an official arrangement, I'm not sure, whatever it is, but so and the plywood is helpful with that because it's easy to clean. But outside of that, if it's a stagnant
It's
Mhm.
stagnant. There's
It's a
nothing-
stagnant. Right.
site, it's just making sure it's passable. I mean, any activations of usage of the wall space might be,
And that's a separate discussion,
yeah,
right,
those types of things might be nice, but
right.
outside of that, I mean,
It's just a site that's simply
or they're
Not
gonna
gonna have
use it
construction.
for something else?
No, not that we heard.
not.
Not yet.
Not yet, right. So, I mean, that's the other part of the discussion is they're taking, I think they want suggestions, I don't know if they want suggestions, but they're taking suggestions for intermediate use of the site. I think, I don't know if they were serious about this, but the pickleball court, I think, was one of the things that,
Affordable housing, tents, I don't know. Maybe we need that.
But Frederica has her hand up.
oh, Frederica. You're muted, Frederica.
Are you
Yeah,
there?
thank you. First of all, I know that the EDC has shared some of their feelings about this with the meatpacking bid. And if they've shared it with the meatpacking bid, it's baffling that they can't do the same with us. So given that we're talking about a building that's going to be shrouded for 18 months, I don't think that we should be so quick to be generating our own comments when we could just continue to ask them to provide us with their document. And then we can respond to that. And-
I think for the meatpacking bid, that's for the second part, which is the activation.
No, it's actually, the meatpacking bid is very concerned about what they're going to cover the building in and how it's going to be patrolled and how it's going to be, the site is going to be kept clean. So they're, just as Carter said, the bid is on top of all of this. And that's good for us because there's a better chance that it'll be well taken care of. But we do still have a role in this. They've asked us to comment, so why can't we just continue to ask them to present the information that they shared with the bid with us? We can handle it next month. There's no deadline, right?
Well, actually, no, they did ask us, when they first approached us, they gave us a deadline of May
It was,
May 1st.
right, May 1st. I mean, it was totally out of our,
Right,
it was off schedule. It was not possible. And they it was not possible for us to comment as a committee or a board within their timeline.
But I guess what I don't, I
On-
guess what I don't understand is what are we commenting on if they haven't given us anything?
But I think we're making this perhaps a little bit bigger than it is. What they're saying is we're closing down the site for a significant period of time, 18 months or whatever it is. Are there any extra things we should be concerned about as we put the site to bed or emptying it out? But I think that most normal things are what we would be expecting. And it's unique in that the bid generally patrols, this is in their district. So they're generally, the bids, they're supplementary cleaning services. That's the primary responsibility of every bid. And that's, they are obviously concerned about that because if there's not a partnership with the city, they're burdened much more heavily with that. And if you talk to any of the bids, there's an ongoing issue with that as well anyway, with the trash, containerization, et cetera. But outside of that, I mean, is there anything significant about this site that warrants some extra detail that we as a community might know to share with the city? For example, rat abatement, right? Is that a particular issue
Well,
in this area?
Yeah,
Just
because
given
now
its
that it's a
history?
dead area instead
Right.
of an actively used area, all those things increase.
Right,
That's very helpful.
or is there, any extra lighting needs? I mean, but I think that most of these, given the attention here, do we need to, unless we have a specific, hey, can you make sure there are lights, extra lights in this particular area?
Yes,
I'm
let's see
not
what their
sure.
plan is.
Right.
Well,
What
I mean, I
that's
think what
saying.
they're asking for is before they do this, they'd like to know if there's extra step while they have their work crews there, right?
Yeah.
And setting it up. After the fact,
I think
It's
Carter,
already
I think
done.
that's a correct interpretation of what they're
Yeah.
asking. And, so that's the question, out to the committee is, again, do we have anything special above and beyond for the
Yeah.
site? And considering, for 388 Hudson, we didn't.
this is a larger.
It is a larger, right?
Or it's
And there's actually a building on there as opposed to.
Yeah,
just
and
open.
I think that there's some other situations, for example, you have the High Line that is going over a portion of it. Does this include hectares? Does it not?
Yes.
You know,
It does
And
include.
does. So
hectares, yes.
suddenly you start having some, additional
Hector's is leaving.
well, I'm just saying it's a closed off, but maybe if it's just 3 straight lines of boarded fencing, it's maybe not so concerning.
You could look into it. Can you look into it from the highlight?
Yes, you can look
Yeah.
into it.
Oh, that's good. That's the
I-
security right there.
I think one of the things that, if anybody had some thoughts, is access points into the site. Because that would dictate any vehicle movement for some time.
Well, that's
Into the
the
site?
gate that the Parks Department has.
Like, I have no idea, I don't know what,
Yeah,
where those are, but
it's just on.
And
just
again, we don't
beside
have
the
any
gate.
written communication from them.
Washington, I think, for the High Line.
Yes.
To be able to.
Yes, and that's going to be,
Access that.
Is that the?
it's on Washington Street, just north of.
Oh, just north of the-
Beside Shake Shack.
Oh, okay, got
Beside
it.
Shake Shack. But I think that we could really double down on the rat abatement.
Yeah.
I think that, because we haven't mentioned that. We could just,
I think
Say something.
the other thing I would add is to be mindful of pedestrian access, because I think that right on Washington, that sidewalk area is very narrow, so if they
And
could
it
put
is.
the,
And there's a place where the trucks park.
exactly, that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking of. So
Yeah,
just to be
definitely.
mindful to maintain pedestrian access.
Maybe also the fence doesn't have to be right up against the sidewalk.
I think the fence is going to be on the building.
Huh?
From what I understand, the fence is going to be on the building. Isn't that?
Well, but isn't it, this is all, I'm
That's
not
what I
as
took
familiar
by
with
this
so many
one. I
other
didn't
things, but
understand
isn't
it that
this
way.
open? It's pavement.
There's sidewalk
There's a lot of sidewalk.
and the
Yes.
driveway where the trucks.
That's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
not the building, because I'm like,
Where,
but
where,
if the trucks are gone, isn't that improvement in and of itself?
Yeah.
Well, they could walk.
They
You don't have to
block
walk
the
into the
sidewalk.
street.
yeah, you
So-
can walk on the sidewalk now.
Yeah.
I mean,
but anyway, but even if they could pull it back, I think that if it's something, and they say 18 months.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
Just keep it
Might be
lit
another
too, so it doesn't
president
become this
something.
dark,
Yeah, you never know.
which I doubt they will, but we certainly want that.
so one of the things I would think of too, and again, I'm sure that the bid is much more familiar with the conditions here, but it's just blowing trash, right? Because it's windy along the waterfront, we've got a little different issues going on there, and if there's not active management of that whole space or anybody cleaning up, and it's just the bid, which may have been the case before, you know, they may have been the only people maintaining it, that's an issue. But what happens if trash blows behind the fences and stuff like that? You know what?
Yeah, well, they're not going to want it to be an eyesore, and these are all sort of
So
eyesore
that's
prevention.
why I just bring it
Yeah,
up,
which
you know,
is
it's like.
Yeah, all right.
But these seem to me like these don't warrant any official action from us. This is more something that might be shared with them through
Informally.
informal
We
communication.
have a bi-weekly meeting.
Yeah,
There's two things in the chat.
Yeah, it was just Pete.
Oh, it's not,
Yeah.
okay.
just,
I
you know, and I think that, you know, any rat abatement.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also just stability in the building if it's not in good shape, as people have mentioned, and suddenly people walk away.
Mhm.
You know, if there's any water
Structural
ingress
issues or-
issues, like mold, stuff that's not dried out, everything's sealed up. I don't know if that becomes a larger issue for people on the outside, but
Okay, that's good.
So, I mean, I think we can, you know, we'll share this informally. Like we said, we have a bi-weekly call with EDC every other Friday. And seeing if they haven't shared any documents with us, you know, I think we can just informally share.
Just say they are gonna share the draft plan at the end of May, just it doesn't fall within our cycle, and we did reach out and ask for it to be shared prior to this meeting, if possible, so. There is a document. that
But
we
before,
will-
before our meeting, we don't have
Yeah,
any document for us to look at. So-
maybe expanding on the rat abatement, it should just be exterminator services and regular.
Yeah.
Exterminator services, because it is a food handling
was a-
site,
right.
you know, that there's all kinds of things, and once it stopped being actively used and cleaned every day. I mean, that is a century of use.
Yes, with organic materials.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
stuff.
they've got all sorts of stuff in there.
Okay. If they do share any documents with us, we can forward that to the committee. But I think I'm hearing that we don't need to pass a resolution on this. It's just, you know, we can informally just share some of the discussion points that we talked about.
Okay.
It's a little bit just disappointing to hear that this is consistently off cycle
Mhm.
with us, and there's a lack of interest in engaging with us as a partner in this on a city-owned site, and it just seems to be
We've
repeating itself over
we've
and over
reiterated
again.
that.
Yes.
And that's just unfortunate
Mhm.
Yep.
It is unfortunate.
that's the case, because, you know, I think that there's an interest in having a larger partnership
Right.
in what's happening here in discussion, but it's just an exclusion and a sort of rhetoric that's thrown
Particularly
around.
following up on the report that we saw from Andrew, which was a complete failure of the Soho NoHo rezoning, with all the community engagement we had, and here's Gigi on this, in this again, so.
Well, I mean, and even to the point, you know, where they, you know, Frederica said that they're sharing with the bid, there's only a recent, it seems there's only recent engagement with the
Absolutely.
bid on this, where we heard a presentation from the bid not that long ago,
Right.
work that they did, that they never even envisioned this as an opportunity. And so they did all this work without even considering the option that
Mhm.
this site would be available. And that missed, you know, as I pointed out over and over, an entire opportunity from a city planning perspective to re-envision this whole area and the deindustrialization, the connecting of the street grid, all these things which could have happened and didn't happen at all, not even, you know,
Nothing.
and that's the biggest disappointment,
Yeah,
because you know, I just went through there this past weekend, and you see that it would take a little bit of creativity, but there's work that can be done to make this whole area
Yes.
yeah,
a better for all of the city's needs across the board, and housing being one of the key examples, and making it more pedestrian friendly, making it more accessible to residents, you know, activating the space very differently by improving the accessibility. So just having this lack of communication over and over is not helpful, because I feel like we're not being treated as a partner in this. And the only objection that I hear regularly is height, and that's it. I have not heard any other objections.
What did you say?
Height is the only,
Oh, of the tower?
the tower is the only
That's,
objection, and that's been
That's a-
across the board.
there's so
Outside of
many
that, there's a
earlier problems.
willingness to discuss every aspect of this and, you know,
Dig in.
potentially make it better.
Mhm. Yeah. For the issue of the activation of the site,
Okay, Pete has been asking for a definition of activation, which is, you know,
Yeah.
legitimate.
So my understanding about what they're talking about activation is programming of the site. I don't know if I'm using more buzzwords to explain, but they, you know, they've talked about
During this period.
during the period, again, from when the meatpackers vacate, and the vacate should be happening on July 1st, although they said it may be staggered a little bit because it is a co-op. So not necessarily all of them are aligned on the same schedule, but so far, I think July 1st is the agreed date, up until the groundbreaking. So, and the programming would be external to the building. So we're not talking about anything inside the meatpacking building,
Or
but,
even in that donut,
right,
In the parking lot.
right?
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and also one of the other restrictions is it needs to conform with the zoning for the area, so it needs to be, I believe, food related
Or a flower market.
or a flower market.
So one of the things that is available on the site is the space that's within their property line, but that's before the building. And there's quite a bit of that. So if we're actually talking about activation spaces,
Yep.
you know, that's an opportunity that, you know what I mentioned, just the flat wall, if you were to actually go back and the city was agreeing to allow use of some of that space, we have all the old loading dock area, right, which is in play of whatever space in line from the state they're taking. You have Little West 12, the south side,
It's pretty
you
big.
know, it's set back a little, it's not huge, but it's
Mhm.
what, 10, 12, it's something, right?
It's more than just a sidewalk.
Yeah, and so there's some options there for, you know, perhaps, you know, flower vendors, right? I mean, there's like all kinds of things, but that takes, you know, somebody to manage it. And when you say activation, I'm not sure, you know, what that means,
Mhm.
but there is space to do something there if you were to do a setback and the city were willing to allow that space to be used.
Yeah,
That would be good to activate the sidewalk somewhere along this huge barren land. And an enormous enclosed plywood with a little narrow sidewalk is pretty horrific.
For 18
Live
months,
with.
yeah, for 2 years, yeah.
At least, I mean, we have no idea, things stay for 10 years, so it's not, if we could set it up so that we can create some life on these, even temporarily, fairs or
What
whatever.
happened to the interim use? Remember
I think
or that's after the building is torn down? I mean,
Isn't that what this is?
This is.
no, but when you, what you were saying, they were gonna do things,
this
No, we were-
is the interim use.
so it's
Well,
just
no,
the
but this
fencing.
is- No,
Oh, no,
this
no,
is
no,
different. The
this is-
interim
it's-
use they mentioned was interim use of the interior space.
Right,
But then
I think
you
that-
can't
that
have
was-
plywood and close.
Right.
No, but I think this is,
Yeah, so
they
there was-
also still, I would think, need to do some work
Yeah.
prior
Oh, sure.
to an interim use, right? I
So
mean, I don't know.
Well, we've
This
been
is-
told that it's not going to include anything internal. because
Yeah.
I believe the building is not,
Right, they need
They
to
don't
do
want to
they would,
invest.
they would need to
Meatpackers.
put in a lot of money to
Yeah.
bring that up to code.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I,
There's a lot of asbestos and this and that,
Yes.
yeah.
So that brings up a lot of interesting points, particularly along the area where on the west side of the building where the loading docks were, right? I mean, that's a fairly
Big space.
substantive space.
right,
That could be used for all kinds of outdoor, activations of some sort. But with that said, there's so much other space that's already used in the area. Is
Mhm.
there enough demand to do, a need for that? Because you can only offer so many things. And if it's 18 months starting from around now, that's 2 summers, right? 2 outdoor seasons potentially.
I mean,
Let me- can I, before we go on, can I just share some notes from our last call around the activation? So what they told us was, first, they envisioned the bid taking the lead on all activations. And I think basically the bid would manage all the entities that were coming on for any intermediate uses. They also mentioned the bid and the Whitney working together around an art component
Maybe the High Line too, being part of.
as a partner, right, as a
For the
potential partner, I
art,
think.
yeah.
but
Well, they're the immediate neighbors, so they
They're
have
gonna enter
vested,
into an operating
Right.
agreement.
they have to. get the-
Contextualize it.
Right, and then they also mentioned a commercial aspect, possibly advertising and sponsorship, which also raises the issue of money coming in,
To do what?
To do
Well-
who get to whom?
I believe, to the bid, right? I think that so nothing is finalized, but what they mentioned was possibly having that offset some of the bid's operating costs because they would need to be managing the site,
And there's no one to
They're
pay.
not managing the site.
or managing
Is
the
that how
activation.
bids do that? Is
So
that?
everybody pays in,
Yeah,
but there's no one to pay in here. I'm just,
Well, no,
Doing
the
logically.
city,
Yeah.
the city, but they also generate money for the city through the plaza programs. And they generate a significant
Mhm.
amount of money that I believe goes to the general fund for the city, as well as the bid.
Well, I'm
So
just,
they
yeah,
split that money on some relationship, and it's not, a small amount.
But
So I
there's-
don't know what the expectation is, right? If you want this, like the fence polished every day, that's one level of service. Well, I mean, versus if it's painted green,
right.
and it gets rolled if there's some graffiti
Graffiti removal.
periodically, or what's the expectation there? And that turns into, if you want to activate it for some other use,
But it may also,
What I understood advertising and
Advertising would really
sponsorship to
like-
be meaning was, I think, like a local business, if a local business wanted to plaster one side of the plywood.
This is like, it's like putting up an advertising billboard.
yeah.
Right.
Essentially, yeah.
Covered with
That was
that.
my understanding.
I could see a big
Advertising.
LED screen there, so.
I think that would
this
be
is just
not-
a
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
I just have a simple suggestion, which
Uh-huh.
is if they, whatever they enclose the site in, wherever they can, they pull back 10 feet or something like that.
What do you mean?
So that you're not right up against the property line, so that you don't create these really
Oh, narrow,
difficult, nasty. And you could, listen, you could plant a tree or two, or
interesting.
it would be it would make it less oppressive.
Some sidewalk landscaping.
Yeah, either that, or they can rent out for flea markets
Yeah.
or, but
There's a zoning issue. They're trying to, they could do plantings and that
I
wouldn't,
think planters and things would be, That would
It's
be
just for
fine.
now, so it's
Yeah.
not so horrible.
I know, I agree. That's a
But
great
let's
idea.
just step back for a minute, and this area is all activated. This all has open streets during the day, there's plenty of available seating.
But these
They
words
have a plaza,
activation.
which is regularly used, you see all the events
Three
that come
plazas.
before, 3 plazas, So the question is how, maybe is just softening this so it's not a
Yeah.
massive void. So it has some light activation, but remember, inactivated construction sites become advertising sites because they're wheat pasted in
Yeah,
there.
All the
Yeah.
time.
So it happens anyway, but I'm not sure that's what people want.
Well, also if
See.
it's pulled away a little bit, it's not so, I don't think you need to create a really hostile environment just because they're gonna build a building there. So if they
But what does
can,
that mean?
it means that if you are creating a completely barren land with no action on the street at all,
Mhm.
that it would be dangerous.
So,
And if you pull it back, your corner opens up and, I'm just trying
but
to.
if the corner can be open, because remember, these are old parking spaces, old trucks. So
I'm
like-
not trying to
No, no,
solve
I'm
it,
just-
but
But I.
or it could even just be one or two places.
But
even.
my point though is, so you pull it back, then what? If you don't have a plan, it creates open space that somebody else will
Of course,
occupy.
you plant
And-
that.
and
I
that's-
think you have to plant it
But,
or whatever.
but I'm just saying, we know what it is.
But
We know the specific.
Streetscape is something the bid could deal with.
Yeah, and they have portable ones and
Yeah, that's what they do.
let them try out some things.
Mhm.
Oh, that'd be great. Why couldn't we recommend it be used for a
Exceeding.
bioswale, a sort of experimental bioswale?
It's all paved.
They're gonna have to,
But it's all
But it's
paved.
all paved.
well, they could take some.
They have portable ones
I
on the
think that
street.
there's.
Oh, portable bioswale, she says.
They have them on the street. But again, we don't have to solve the problem. I think we're bringing up a concern
Mhm.
that a long, low plywood fence on a narrow sidewalk in a place where there's it's a very
Industrial.
difficult street.
Yes.
The width of it is very wide.
Me isn't gonna want that either. They're not gonna want that street to become horrible and,
Nobody does. It's
Yeah.
unpleasant, but nobody's giving it any thought either.
I mean, the sewer's back up here.
On the list
This is
of,
not exactly.
on the list of items that you shared, I think all of them sound great, pop-ups, food trucks, art installations, we talked about landscaping. I think advertising and sponsoring is like a no. I think the other thing I would ask is like for them to contextualize it within the neighborhood and to at least notify our street activities
When you
committee.
say them, do you mean the bid? Do you mean?
What sounds like they're the ones who are gonna be operating this.
Any pop-up should go through street activities.
Yeah, so just to be
Uh-huh,
mindful of street activities. and
Yeah.
The programming that'll happen if there's traffic concerns or anything.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, do we want to pull up any pictures of the area and look at it? Because it
Like
just
on
seems
Google
like,
Maps or,
I mean, that seems to be the.
I mean, could
We
you,
need a big
yeah,
engineering.
do you think you could share like a,
Street view?
yeah, maybe a street view?
So the Google Earth, I think we had used the Google Earth before.
Last
it
time,
was
yeah.
pretty, insightful.
So maybe while Arturo's doing that, was there anything else from what they had told us verbally about the activation?
I didn't bring my notes because I thought they would get wet. But I think.
I have a simple
All right.
question, because I got confused with some of the words. We have a building and a lot. Once the current occupants leave,
Right,
it needs to be secured.
right.
And then is that what you're calling the activation of enclosing it, and protecting it?
That's
No,
security.
that's a site
Okay,
security.
so the activation comes from using it.
Yeah.
Use, right, that's, so like, for example, I'm just throwing out food trucks, like if they decide to have food trucks for like the month of July.
And
That would be
why is it
considered an
not
activation.
chain link?
Do you
They,
want to put the
they,
Google
I,
Earth?
they
Do the-
specifically, I don't know
Oh,
what
the
reason
down
they gave
view,
for the
Yeah,
plywood versus chain link, but they did
Even
specifically say they were.
One entity, I think it might be the bid, someone usually uses chain link
They-
and someone uses plywood. and
They
they
use chain link.
plywood.
This is gonna be the first one where they use plywood,
Yeah.
EDC.
Plywood run out.
Yeah, so EDC has not used plywood before to secure any of their sites.
Well, it doesn't make for a very good interim use, because even a food truck, you don't want to pull into a plywood enclosed
Yeah, but
space.
look-
No, it's not all
It's
closed.
just straight lines.
Is this shared?
These are all straight lines.
Okay, yeah,
So if you zoom in on the top boundary,
Yeah, there.
up there, you have
right.
just,
Well, they're not that narrow, the sidewalks, if you don't have
And
parking
you're not-
there.
This is
Those
used for
trucks,
parking
There's a lot of
currently, yeah.
space.
Yeah, and which,
that driveway.
Well, that already has it built in. I'm sorry, I thought the site was It would be fine if it
More the left
follows
side?
that and doesn't take over more though, because they might be entitled to more.
I don't think they're talking about, no, I don't think.
So you have that, and then you have on the west side over here,
That whole
right,
area.
you have that, but,
Was there a comment from Pete? I missed that in the chat.
Yeah, he said that,
Exhaust from.
yeah,
There's issues with food trucks.
Okay.
And not
because
only
of the
that,
noise and the-
irrespective,
Doesn't matter.
let's
People
just
hate
look at the space
No
that's
one's living there.
available before we think about, because if they pull back the space,
If they just go by. the
then you
building.
have, you have available area. The street won't be demapped, so that may not be available, but that whole,
Apron.
sidewalk colored could be.
did they
And-
want to put the plywood on the building, Valerie? Do you remember that?
The plywood, I have to look through my notes, but the plywood was, I think that was a request of the bid, maybe? Because in the
So-
RFP,
Stay right there.
in the RFP, Q and A, they say it's
I'm
going to be.
gonna do a
That's
tour.
the 2.5.
Right.
aperture. So
No.
that's changed.
Oh, great.
So the street is outside of the site.
So you see all that area is very easy to pull back.
It is, it's
And-
perfect, I like that.
But the question becomes, if you create too much space, you
All right, but
create
then you can start
opportunities for
closing it back.
payments, a whole other issues, so.
You can always close it back in a slightly,
The 10th Avenue side is not part of what's going to be activated.
BDC had said the 10th Avenue, right, that's the fourth side that they're not
Three
including.
sides and then.
Right.
10th Avenue is not going to
Well,
be
there are only three
activated?
sides.
There are only three sides,
Well, but there's that courtyard that becomes.
but that's going to be used by the city.
So for example,
We'll ask
here,
about that.
you
We'll ask about
have, if you want, you could go back in a little bit, but again, what is, you create the space
Mhm.
and then what? I mean, most of these spaces, when I have transited through the area, are not used. The open streets are not used, people don't sit on them on a regular basis, and so it's mostly weekend actively managed
And they're
stuff.
not, and they're not really closing the streets anymore.
So Anita-
like they were.
Yeah.
well, I was just saying, I think there are many different levels of enclosing the site, and it could,
It's narrow.
if they follow the building, you put a chain link fence in front of it, and that's the courtyard where whatever it is you're thinking of using.
But
Oh, I
they already
see.
said they're not doing it.
But
No, but-
they specifically said they're not. gonna
But Anita is bringing out another point. They could put the plywood on the building and then they could put a chain link fence up so people couldn't get in there at night and just open up the fence on the sidewalk lines for them. I'm just, that's.
Anyway, there are different levels of
Saying,
doing
Carla.
it. And
That's
also
what Anita's
on the other street, whatever that is, the other street, not the
So
Washington.
it sounds just like it's just gonna be Little 12th and Washington Street.
No,
Three
no,
three
10th
sides.
Avenue too.
There's gonna be three.
Oh, on 10th.
Well, there's the underside of the,
Mark, they said they were
Highline.
not, what did they say about 10th
Yeah,
Avenue?
Mark, could you repeat that?
I'll go get my notes, but I'm pretty sure they said that the 10th Avenue site, especially since it's not yet part of the site. It's still owned by the state, but that's not going to be part of what.
No, but you have the whole setback
You have the whole
area, the
setback.
loading dock area, which isn't part of the street.
The road is the state,
I'll check.
not.
Yeah, because so it's,
But the
the road
sliver-
is,
the
because if
sliver-
you look at that, Mark, where you see the different color,
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with,
right,
yeah, but I'm pretty sure they were saying that whole thing is just going to be not part of the activation.
It kind of makes sense. It's not very
Whether
well
there's a wall
frequented,
there or
right?
not is a different matter.
Actually, I will turn around and say that since they have the crosswalks going across there now, there are a lot more people, it's not as busy as other areas, but there are a lot more people walking down that part of 10th Avenue there to get from the
Yeah.
Whitney up to
Right.
go.
And there's a blue area where they paint it just above where they.
That's
painted
below
it.
it, that's lower, that's
And
south
that's
of
below.
Gans.
That's the other.
Okay.
I also want to call out the property line. If you look at the properties east on Little West 12, you'll see that the property line, the buildings are built up to where those,
Right here.
you wouldn't have all that parking, is all I'm saying.
That's right.
And I'm sure that's their property line. They will reclaim that part if they
Yeah,
could. If they didn't do it, again, it would be a little,
no, they're going to Replace.
less aggressive,
Once
that's
they-
all.
Actually, it's a good question. I don't know if the sliver is going to be part of this because technically it's still owned by the state.
Well, but they just held, the
Yes.
DCAS held a public hearing, a voluntary public hearing, to acquire that sliver.
If you
That's
could-
already happened.
I'm sorry, if you could,
It's already happened.
yeah, if you're gonna, if you want to say anything,
Yeah.
I think you need to.
Sure.
Join us, you
I
don't
was
need
just, I was just gonna say that the sliver, that there was already on April 23rd.
That's what we're saying, the sliver is
Okay,
not
so-
a
so
part
just-
of.
No, but she's saying there was a
Look-
public hearing.
looking at
So
the-
Yes,
You emailed
but-
us about that.
Well, just
Yeah,
looking
they
at the
haven't
zoning
conveyed it
lots,
yet.
the building line is the property line to the west. In fact, that northwest structure that sticks out a little bit is actually not within the property line.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That little,
Yeah,
That
so
little,
the block and lot is
Technically outside.
yeah, is outside, which though means, is that sidewalk? And if it is, it should be available,
yeah,
then it should be available.
that's right.
And we should point that out, that it should be open. But those are the areas though that, when, I don't think they're looking for suggestions on heavy intensive uses.
No.
It's just a light use of what could maybe not be a blank area. And in order to have those uses, you just need the setbacks so there's enough space to mitigate the security concerns. You don't want to create any cornered spaces, et cetera, right? Because that
defensive
just,
space,
yeah, right, whatever.
that's what it's called.
Okay, yeah. So, having some open area, but again, you have an open area, then what? And,
And that's what we're talking about.
do we, if you put seating in, somebody has to manage it, if it's temporary. If you put in permanent seating, you have other issues that.
I don't think you want to put seating in,
So,
they're not there. It's
well, I
not.
mean, that's sort of my point.
No,
Then
but
what?
well, you just laid out, it allows for a safer environment.
No, but what do
basically.
you do then if you don't?
Plant it,
See,
you just plant it with
but-
these
but-
portable things or whatever. Or art installations, or, do we
But
have to
that's what
tell them
they're-
everything?
No, I think.
No, they don't use
that's-
plywood and they use the either chain link with the plastic. It's much less maintenance. The
And
plywood-
Darlene has a good comment in that, because
Did you read the comment?
Right,
the
exactly.
preferred
yeah.
method to cover the cyclone fence is with a weed plastic fabric to prevent postering
see
and
that,
some
yeah.
graffiti. Yeah.
It also ends up with garbage all over everything.
Well,
I mean, it's all unappealing.
Right, I don't think they're gonna want this to.
Well, the only other activation thing that I think we heard mentioned was that maybe Hector's is going to have a goodbye party. Or some, they said, that was just like, oh, maybe Hector's is going to have a
Yeah, but
goodbye
that-
party.
That doesn't have anything.
No, I'm sharing it because
Oh,
it's the
okay.
only other
Yeah,
thing
that's true.
that they had a little bit of a bead on.
So then would the idea be to have, so the west part of the lot, according to Zola, the lot line is the building line. On the north part, that setback parking area is within the property line.
Right.
So that's an area where we could ask, for example, for a fence to be set back further. But you create the opening, then what? Is that just gonna engender illegal parking?
Even if it's
Is that gonna,
concrete,
when you
I
give
think it's
space,
better.
people will occupy it, and so.
Illegal
It-
parking
it's-
is a big,
Well, no, I'm just saying
Possibility.
it just
It's a
kind of,
possibility.
if you don't have anything there and it's empty, and I think that's what they're asking us, do you have any ideas? I don't think that advertising is a good idea, but I think the reason it comes up is because it's an opportunity to cover a lot of square footage in a way that's beneficial for something.
Wow.
And if you have it as artwork, that's another option, but who
Who maintains it?
who maintains it, who does that, where's the funding come from to run that program?
There should be a lot of interest in these areas.
But again, that's like the kinds of things the bid does.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it really the purview of our committee to
No.
comment on this? I mean, this is,
I think we should just avoid getting a really fierce aggressive, unpleasant, which we know from the outset
Uh-huh.
is not a very appealing solution. And if there's something else, you can make it,
Not an eyesore.
So is the
Right.
general
it's safer. It's safer.
consensus then
Hmm.
that that the site is actively managed, right, on the interior, right, that there's.
I think there's
anytime
nothing on the
there's-
interior.
No, I mean, as far as extermination, Services
Going back to
maintaining
that. Okay.
any damages, right? That the
Yeah.
area maintains a sense of openness, right? That any, that it's appropriately lit. I mean, these are basic things, but if
Yeah,
you're
I like
writing
the
a,
way you're saying it.
it's just basic stuff, but
Yeah.
but it's a
Basically
guiding
everything.
principle of just saying, hey, have it open and lit and
Hmm.
and to
And secure.
prevent, improper uses of the area, right? Because
Yeah.
improper use is anything from parking to encampments or whatever else.
Well, and why wouldn't maybe an artist from the Whitney want to paint it?
Like a local artist.
Something, I mean, this is like the heart of
Well, we
creativity. We have so many
But-
options.
But that's,
Carter, remember, we fought very hard to put the white columns in the Gansevoort Street space right across.
Mhm.
I mean, engage them. I mean, they're artists,
but there's not funding for any of this stuff, so it's just.
Yeah, this
allow
isn't
them
about
to
us
start,
to engage white columns. That, again, the bid and if they have a budget. We're not
I would
gonna do
just
that.
It's
rather
our
see sort of either just a non-commercialization of the
Yeah.
space,
Yeah, yeah.
openness, that it's well lit.
Unless it's
And-
really
and-
not, unless it's art.
Well, unless
not
it brings
commercial.
unless it brings some sort of affordability as far as some food options. Food
Yeah.
options are always struggled here, we've heard that.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's still the case, Donna, you know more of a bit, but the local affordable food options have always been a struggle around here
Yeah.
to offer.
There are food
and-
trucks.
But that's what
but
I mean,
not-
so you don't
There's a
wanna
few of
have
those.
competition with any
Right.
brick and mortar stores, but, food trucks do help.
But they already
visitors
have
who
some of
come
those,
to the
so
west
they do,
side,
yeah, in front of the Whitney.
High Line.
Yeah, that guy's.
I think there's also one other comment, just looking at the notes from that Mark provided, that he was taking from our meeting. One of the other comments from EDC was that to prevent posters from showing up on the plywood, they were gonna rely on security to make sure that's what they told us.
You provided they will
And
come.
also, if there are any planned art installations that they were hoping that would discourage.
No,
No,
Again,
Hoping is not
Hoping.
that's
reality.
very respectful on the West Side Highway. I'm not so sure.
we already have
They
a,
get a quick getaway there.
we have a resident there. Right, there's a guy who lives on the West Side Highway between Little West 12 and
We
West.
can put him on the payroll, maybe. Good.
There's a guy who's always out there when I walk
Oh,
by.
I'm sure there may be more than
One guy
one.
has his property,
She's talking about somebody living on the side.
Homeless person. who's
oh yeah,
living
it's there.
But I mean, this might just be more funding, right, to support the bid and that's an agreement that the city enters into with them and funds appropriately to have.
well, yes,
graffiti
so I mean, the
services.
bid, also the bid
Invested.
did make the pitch that revenue from commercial advertising could support the activation plan. So that was put forward by the bid specifically to capture some revenue from
Yeah.
commercial advertising.
Of course.
Just relaying the notes from what they told
Well,
us.
we're
Well, if
we're
it's a
gonna say. no
city-owned
commercial.
site, did they ever contribute into the bid anyway? I mean, so that, I mean, it's the open question.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how the funding for that works, if it was leased to other businesses, I don't know,
Not
right?
sure.
Then the property owner that is the one who makes the contributions
yeah,
to it, so
usually.
if the city was the
The
property
city's,
owner,
yeah, if the city will be the property owner,
well, I don't think they're required to,
I
but I
don't know
don't
if the
know.
city is paying into it as
Yeah.
an interim landlord.
Well, I think we've got.
I think we've had like a reasonable number of ideas to pass back to EDC at our next meeting. And so we'll send these back and we'll keep that communication open with the committee. Okay,
Before you leave Gainsbourg,
oh yeah, I also wanted to just see if there was any public. Go ahead.
fine, we could do that, but when we talked about, when Carter, said, it's a dead issue about the remapping, I mean, did anything happen with Eric or Deborah or hope of going to?
About getting some additional, about the demapping for the additional. We don't have any updates from that. So there's no updates from any of the electeds on that yet.
But we've never put forward in a resolution a bigger vision. So all we've asked of them is little rinky-dink stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Which we
just
can have, I mean,
what,
and I think that's a reasonable thing to have as a discussion.
because unless you put forward a vision for somebody else, say, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And find somebody who maybe is remotely interested in this to have a leadership position in it, because there's not a whole lot of people who can take this leadership position and be an advocate. And I don't know if the elected officials are necessarily the only ones. I mean, and just thinking about some of the large scale projects that have happened in the area, they require somebody with the vision and is able to share that with others and perhaps put the funding forward to do some basic work that's beyond our ability to do so. But we already saw a major vision, which happened right here, which was Little Island. I mean, that was a transformative, vision that happened here. This is immediately adjacent to that site, and the whole area could be completely re-envisioned at this moment in time. If you take another few steps, you lose the opportunities because all these sites are undeveloped, are either redevelopment sites, are in the mix for, and publicly owned.
So I think that we can have that discussion. I just want to close out the
Okay.
issue of the activation. So if there's a
There's one
public,
hand.
yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much, Pete Davies. I come to this discussion with the hope that it means something, but when I hear at the top that the EDC is unable to share basic information with you, and gives no guidance really about what the parameters of the area are beyond some general, the edge, the limitations, the parameters. It just, we've been through this before, Soho NoHo envisioning. Some of the same cast of characters are running this that ran that. And don't want to be a cynic, but they love to keep us busy. They love to wear us down. And, maybe something good will come of this, but sounds like a big bucket of what to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Pete.
you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Any other comments? I think I don't see any others. Okay. All right. Do we want to have a quick discussion then on the vision for Gansevoort as a future topic for us to take on? I mean, I think Carter brings up an interesting point, right? Is that, we've had some ideas in our resolutions, but, we haven't had a resolution specifically about what we would like. I mean, we've had, we've specifically asked for additional parts of the state DOT land to be ceded to the city and demapped. I think we've also had, and I don't know if it's an explicit ask, but an ask for like more of an integrated plan of mixing housing as well as cultural, the Whitney, versus having it be split up along lot lines. But we don't actually have a specific resolution saying what our vision is. I mean, I look back on what we had for 388 Hudson, before HDC came, we did have an information session with, I think it was a WXY studio.
WXY. I would say XYZ, but I think it's right.
I think it's WXY studio, where they had come with some ideas for what their vision for 388 was, and that was before all of the presentations about from the city And so I think that was good way for us to kind of see what was possible.
Mhm.
And that was instrumental in us asking for more housing on that site. I think because of the timing on Gansevoort, we really haven't had that because we've been very reactive in terms of,
Right.
trying to meet the city's timetable for when they wanted to announce this. And then with the RFP. But, do we want to take the time to try and solicit?
I think if you put up the Google Street or the Google
Go back
Earth
to
view, and
the,
you can just see in this area, there's a significant amount of underutilized space.
we have it up, so.
No, but even bigger. So if you basically take the meatpacking site here.
Oh, you're talking about across,
No, this basically, the High Line West, with the exception of the hotel, right? That whole
you're
area,
saying beyond this lot.
no, this whole area west
not
of the
looking-
High Line, with the exception of the Standard Hotel, is in play right now. There's nothing built there. The hotel is a development site. Everything south of that is open. And going up, if you keep going up, that you have the other hotel, that's in play also. So you have this entire
Yeah, the
strip.
Liberty.
This is
Anita.
probably one of the most unique areas
Oh, yeah.
right now of an opportunity of what can be re-envisioned. And
Here,
also
here,
with
I
the
like
city,
that.
the city streets that are underutilized, there's no more truck
Yeah.
traffic. And not only that, it can, there's an aspect too of, by creating some other opportunities, there's a little bit more room for some preservation as well. But that street, everything to the west, 10th Avenue, that whole strip, there's nothing there. And there's no reason that whole area can't be,
Well,
reconfigured. And that lot is city owned, the state DOT owns the lot to the south of the Standard Hotel and to the west. So that whole area is, lacking in any strategic vision, where having a visionary that comes, and then you see to the west, you have a little island. So, and you basically have the west side, the West Street, as we call it, West Side Highway further north. Again, this is the dividing line of where CB4 thinks of this very differently than we do, because if you go south in this area, the engagement with West Street is significantly different. So, it's just that's an area that really should be looked at, and we should be asking people to think about that.
And it's all city. The only state is that little road.
Janine has a comment.
Between 13th and.
Who has a comment?
Should I promote her panelist?
Sure, if you want to,
She said, just let her.
do you want to just either read the comment or?
I just,
I didn't see
allow her to talk.
Oh, Janine, hi, Janine.
Hi, Janine.
Hi, good evening. I think I'd like to we have a lot of great ideas and we're using the passive voice. This should happen. Let's talk about who will do what, because the reality is there's a lot of great ideas, but unless we get any leverage with politicians, Eugene, I know I dropped the ball. I was going to reach out to someone. But the reality is we should get a measurement of all these different spaces that
Mhm.
can be combined with this. And we need to reach out to Eric. It's his city council district and push. I can't see who's on. I'm not sure if anyone from his office is on, but the budget is done. Let's reach out to Assemblymember Glick and Brian Kavanaugh, who's chair of the housing committee, push them to, get on board with Hopewell. There's a lot of opportunities here and they can take credit for it. And we need to have a specific action plan, because sitting in this room talking amongst ourselves isn't going to make anything change, but we
Mhm.
need to push our elected officials to really come up with a better plan. And I think it's a combined site plan. I would say it's similar. We kind of footnoted it, but explicitly something like what MoMA did. They have a world-class
Right.
institution where it's at the base of a large building. And so this is an opportunity to have a world-class museum and have even more housing. And I think we're in a situation where the Bloomberg administration gave a ROFO versus a right of first refusal. And so this is only going to change with political pressure. And that's where we need to push it.
I think, Jane, I think we need to actually go beyond, because that change will only happen if there's a larger plan, if there's a larger vision, because otherwise this is just stuck as a individual site. Unless you lead with, this is the beginning, this is the anchor of the change, I'm not sure why.
I think we're saying the same thing, Carter. We just need to be explicit and say, this is the footprint and these are all potential additions to the footprint, simple pie chart. The current footprint is 48%, and all these additional places increase the footprint by 52%. I don't even know what the numbers are.
Right.
And that's just very high level. And this is a huge opportunity. And we're leaving housing on the table for the expediency of, an arts institution that's important, but not the only most important thing.
Right.
Can I ask Janine just a mechanical question? Are you the one who brought in WXY for 388 Hudson?
That's what I was gonna ask next.
Originally it was David and David Gruber and Toby Bergman, and then I followed up, but because they originally looked at it, like in 2014.
Sure. Yeah.
So they have been looking at it for a while before they came.
They looked at it once, and then we asked them to update it.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. That's a good.
It wasn't an ongoing process.
Right. But that makes sense.
Right. And the timetables happen to match up with when HBD approached us as well.
Yeah.
I guess that the reason I think, and I'm not in disagreement with Janine, but I think that the reason the larger plan is important is because it changes the boundaries.
Well, I agree with you, Carter. I mean, I think we're saying the same thing. Let's just.
That is what you were saying.
And I'm just saying.
But that's also the question I was asking you is, right, I mean, we're looking beyond just this specific lot.
That's right. Well, it's the whole, this whole area.
It's the area.
It's the whole area, and it's an opportunity of city planning that rarely exists in the city.
Question is, how do you get them to look at it? And that's where, if we don't go the political pressure angle, nobody's going to look at it.
No one's jumped in, and we've been discussing it for months.
Yeah, but I guess I just don't see politicians as the leader in this. This seems like a larger New York City uniqueness where you have the people who've made our skyline come in and do something.
So what are you suggesting specifically, Carter?
I'm just saying we need to ask for somebody to come in and say, look at all these great opportunities. Where are the New York minds? Where are they? Why aren't they here discussing this? Why do we just have one small 60-story building that we're asking people to come look at? And is there a vision for this area? And I think that's when you look.
It's called a master plan.
Yeah, and also the parts of the city that don't always make sense. That somebody comes in with the vision. And I'm just saying that's lacking here, because I'm not sure that general civics of proper engagement are going to get this done. This requires more.
When we confronted the committee with that, and
we
the
just have to
architect.
open up the door and say, hey, there's more that can happen here.
so.
Why aren't we having these?
Yeah, but when we tried to broach that with them, the Whitney and their architects in the beginning, they completely stonewalled us, as did the bids. So now we have to find the way to get past that.
Embarrassment would work. Seriously, the plan is so poor.
I mean, I said we should be out there with banners protesting on Saturdays.
It's to Janine's point, like, we need to look forward to the complaining, and people do watch these meetings
Yeah.
afterwards, so just a reminder of that. But like, how do we look forward to get the best deal?
But yeah, and I think though we heard an important comment that was made during the presentation, which, stuck out in my mind, which is the financing. If you are an institution and you want to get something done, you have to see light at the end of the tunnel, right? And at this point, the only light is to go this direction if they want to exercise their option to have, and who can blame them? That's what it is at the moment, right? And I would be questioning doing this relationship with the city on something financed from the city as well, unless you have somebody who's going to carry this forward.
Okay, let's have Anita turn.
I just wanted to say that how I hear, I think we're actually agreeing, Valerie. So I don't know, it doesn't always look pretty, but that's what we are. Is that we're asking for a more cohesive approach. This is a city planning, urban design. Listen, in Europe, everybody does competitions. We should have an amazing competition, and it would bring out the very finest designers. I keep seeing the tower ahead, almost like a bridge is being supported on 2 points, and all the units are hanging between them, and then there's a whole nother life from the 4th floor down. That's what I would do if I were asked to compete. But you understand,
splitting it up into different lots.
you said exactly, it's the cohesiveness. We don't get the luxury. It's like having a dining room. That's nice, but it's got to do more.
Right.
So we don't have the Whitney has a very nice flashy image with its building, as it should.
The current building, right.
So they don't get another one the same. They get a space, and beautiful space, and high space, and maybe better space. It's a win-win thing. It's just gonna be, it requires better design, better approach, and cohesive, thinking about, I like his parameters. I'm still trying to stay in the site, but listen, the whole thing should be an easy access from the High Line directly to the West Side Park. There should be a bridge. That's all there is to it. Why are we navigating that 12-lane highway?
Right.
Yeah.
And this is full of people, good tourism that provides tons of money. I mean,
right, it's right at the beginning of the High Line.
And what they're doing now is creating everything we learned not to do in school. Create a wind tunnel, narrow, dark, indefensible, unoccupied. All it does is it gives you some airspace around that tower, which we don't want. We want it wider, squatter, and more units and more economical.
Is there also a risk that the Whitney would not be able to get their funding and ultimately not build? I mean, right now, because they've split up the lot into, the housing portion and the Whitney portion.
We don't accept that. Then look, it's for everyone's benefit. They may not they don't want to be bothered. Who can blame them? But this is a huge lot, and all the things that Carter said, I say ditto. So it's like, this is something important. And I don't understand
How do we advance that,
why this fake schedule comes in and is like, okay, but now it's all the gate, the horse is out of the gate, and that's it, and you have no, whoa. That's not right. This is too important. And we should be showing our very best face to the
I mean, we were
world.
told from the very beginning, the site plan is not open, right? I mean, they told us that when they came
Right from
to
the
us.
start.
Mind if I show you the outline of the space?
Do you want to share
Yeah,
it?
I'll just share it on the.
Okay, are you?
Do you have rights to share? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an approach. That's what I'm trying to get at,
This
rather
whole
than
area-
getting into too many little things.
Right,
just
is
mark it?
potentially up for,
You did. Oh, that's good.
Okay.
that's a big amount of space, and that includes a city street and the street grid that
that could be one big development.
Well, there
What's
could.
that triangle building?
It'll be our
Left.
Rockefeller Center for that.
The triangle
Ages.
building is the old
Liberty Inn.
hotel, the Liberty Inn,
Hotel, yeah.
Liberty Hotel. Yeah, no, it's private. I mean, these are, some of these sites, the Brass Monkey site, the building next to it, I mean, those are privately owned. But some of that is also city-owned, state-owned. But the point being is that much of that space is significantly underutilized.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's on-
And that a different planning,
The Whitney takes up, that, they're building the same, that almost take up the entire lot.
but the
Okay.
reason it's a concern
Right
here
down
is
and we build over it.
if this project were to move forward, it doesn't allow the option to take advantage of 10th Avenue, for example,
Mhm.
to reframe that relationship. It doesn't, and clearing up sort of that part of the grid. You can also go further south as well, you know, I
Past the
didn't
Whitney.
include past the Whitney and south because you have the whole city street there. But there's some options here of really doing something a little bit.
And Carter, the
Different.
turnaround, the Jane Horatio
Where-
turnaround.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. Exactly. If you
Yeah.
go further south, you're right.
And
There's a
it's
whole.
time, there actually is a beautiful park to go to, you know, I mean,
Right.
the time is ripe, it's a good time for it. We're not having to fix everything up. We
Right,
have
there's
places-
other pieces
places
that
to
are
go.
already in place.
Well, we have all the fairs and everything, so there's a lot of
And
reasons.
I just had a conversation over the weekend too, just, you know, somebody asked about the park over at Jane and Horatio, and, you know, the purpose of that park was to stop the truck traffic from
Right.
coming in. And that's actually, you know, we've had some different questions come up at different times. That's actually demapped streets there. And, you know, so there's an
Is it-
opportunity here for some.
How do we do it,
And
Carter?
even-
Yeah, how do we advance
And,
this?
and even looking at
conversation.
this, well, that's what I mean, that's what we have to put forward, a larger view with some illustrations.
Well,
This
we're
could
trying,
be
but
an
it's
area.
too emotional.
That
We
doesn't
don't
answer
get
the
this.
how.
You know, another option here too is also potentially a rerouting of Route 9A. Just seeing from a picture here,
So
where if you moved it closer inland, you actually would create some better space for our parks, you know, as well.
Very
This-
skinny there.
But this is a conversation that could be encouraged.
So
It might be thinking a little too big, but it's the only
Could CB2
opportunity to do that.
could CB2 sponsor an alternate competition? I can think of a couple people to ask.
I mean,
Can we do that?
I mean,
Well,
I-
not just for the sake of, look, you know, something real has to be on the table.
Yeah, I mean, how do we get that?
But anybody good doesn't need to practice.
Yeah.
Well,
But I like, again, it's thinking outside the box. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
who else? I mean,
I think the only way to get it is, the city planners put forth this design.
ECP?
What does that tell you? They're not calling the shots. Some developer or somebody who has more power has created this site plan. It's not based on the merits of its site or how to use it, or, you know, that it should be designed with excellence and good urban planning concepts.
well, I think the pressure is just build housing now and.
Oh, but that's a
and that's,
BS excuse though.
No, this is a development site and it got put in motion.
I
And
know,
it's
that's
meeting
a
the
BS.
mayor's plan and.
On a mayor's
sees the-
timetable,
on the
too.
mayor's timetable.
You're gonna
So,
get a couple
I mean,
of
I don't-
units.
I mean, that's what he said he was gonna do and he's.
okay, so how do we get, okay, how do we get to the, you know, maybe
I mean,
we need
I
to
like Janine's
percolate a
idea
little
of
more.
approaching, I mean,
Yeah,
getting,
yeah,
engaging with Eric
okay.
Botcher's office. I mean, it seems his support is, yes?
I would say
Again,
it should
if
come up
it's-
to the
it's
table.
not-
Discussion first.
Here.
Well, I just have to get my microphone back.
Maybe you could come and meet with us.
She mentioned, oh, I am, I'm just.
No, not you. I said, Eric Butcher.
Oh, you need to inventory, what are the other spaces and what is the square footage of those? Somebody on the committee should do that. I think that's one thing. I think going to Eric Botcher with this, we still don't, what are we asking for, what that bigger vision is? So what inventory, those
Well, I think
extra sites are.
that's what Janine was
Yeah.
bringing up in terms of like a pie chart of like what additional square foot could we get by adding this portion or going to Carter's map, you know, some of the additional lots beyond just this one city lot. But go ahead.
And then you would have someone based on that do some sort of either, and this is more of Anita's forte of making this recommendation, so maybe she takes over from this, is from a planning standpoint of what could be done there based on, you know, the things that would need to be rezoned or obviously the demapping, and then somebody do a massing. I mean, that's what it could be. That's all it is, through those three things. I mean, they're not simple, but that's.
No, there are a lot of work.
Small thing within that,
It's
yes.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not something you do just, because otherwise it's the same garbage. You have to really work. You have to really do a good job to make it worthwhile.
But we're also up against a clock, right? There's a live RFP that's being considered
Yeah.
right now, and
A lot of time pressure.
Once it starts with ULURP, then it goes into it'll get pre-certified and then go into ULURP. So understanding the committee understanding what that timeline is, I think would be productive. For this
I think we
discussion.
understand the ULURP timeline. I think we're still trying to figure out how do we advance this beyond just a discussion at the committee level.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we can discuss this all we want at the committee level.
Well, I always think maybe it's a journalist we need more than anything, because we're not getting there. We're not making headway. We've been told we're not going to be listened to.
We have been from the start.
Yeah. So even though I think it's still worth putting down what, and again, you don't need a solution, you need a program for one thing. Like, I'm not going to give everybody's air rights over there because we could use that.
Right.
And make a cohesive and then go on to maybe the bigger world scheme. We don't want to make the project bigger and bigger because they're already want to make it cheaper and cheaper, you know. So, but the idea is it should fit into a whole urban view.
So here, this is a larger perspective of including some of the turnaround.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
you're
a-
going further south.
Yeah, well, that's all city, the further south, it's a little rough, but that's actually all demapped. That's demapped state property that goes south. And, you know, even there, you start looking, there's a curve in 9A, there's some opportunities
I
here
think
for
we
some.
agree, but how do we get them to design it or even change?
Understood, but nobody even is thinking about it.
No one has
So
even seen this. except
nobody's
us.
even seen this, that this is actually
Oh, I see.
potentially
Okay,
in
fair
play.
enough.
You know, because this is just an opportunity. Look, people may have designs on what they want, you know, the Liberty End or, you know, with,
I'm
with
sure they
the
gotta
brass
figure it
monkey
out. to
site with the
benefit
guy
them.
next to him and whatever it is,
Yeah.
but these are some opportunities here that really could open up a space that's largely underutilized to have a better purpose
We agree.
for the city. And so
So,
just simply sharing, hey, what could be here? Just that simple question and outlining this a little bit better than that is an opening question,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to solve the specifics. And here we have a parcel, the biggest thing in the middle, that is now going to be vacant. And that vacancy allows for dramatic change because it can, you know, is one of the main sites that was built and in use before. So,
okay, so Carter, you obviously have this, and so you can share it with us.
well, yeah, I mean.
No, it's better than what we have.
You can share it to here's a photo, you know.
You saved it. That's what I want to ask you. You saved it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so.
Yes, I could recreate it better.
Well, you know, sometimes You know, I'm not a perfect artist, but I get it. When I look at it, I
So
get it.
diagram is great, but it
So, and
doesn't have
this-
to be fancy.
And this also brings in, potential planning with any, coastal resiliency.
Oh,
And
definitely.
suddenly that's a section, some ideas, I mean,
Okay, so.
and it doesn't mean any of this happens today, but if you start working towards it.
I know.
Are there any firms that we could approach? I mean, do other committee members have ideas for firms?
I think
that
we should
could
ask
approach?
WXY.
WXY is one of them.
I'm thinking of Amy Gross. Do you know Amy Gross? She's done some work on spec for me in the past, AIME.
Oh, you're talking about for what?
Just to take this.
Oh,
little
a site
thing.
planning thing?
Yeah, take this and make a little bit more out of it.
I wouldn't worry about it. Just take a pen and mark it up because this is not, first, we don't have time. And
Right.
second, we're not trying to get across a really difficult idea. We're saying this should be part of a bigger whole. And we're asking for better design. And that's where we get stuck because this is what they came up with was the last one.
Well, this is the frustration of dealing with the Whitney, who could have been an invaluable partner.
No, but I would not remotely blame the Whitney at all. And the reason is because they have their own responsibilities to an institution with their planning
Mhm.
and taking action when the city has come to them and said, hey, we have a goal of producing more housing.
Mhm.
Here's a site. We want to activate it and do something. And they say, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And then they say, here's what we can do. I mean, that's not anything. We want to bring them with
Yeah.
everybody.
And I think it is a
and-
win-win.
And
I
I
do.
think it
Yeah.
also requires that a larger, I don't want to say visionary, but the power of somebody in New York City who
Yeah.
wants to see this through to bring all the parties together, because this requires a lot of faith, particularly along cultural institutions who rely on public funding to come along with this. And unless you have somebody who's can create that assurances, it's not going to happen.
Okay, so I just want to try to tie this up with a little bow. We have a lot of good ideas. I think we can work on them. Can we bring them back here next month and make a resolution out of them? Or do you want to make a resolution sooner?
Well, I think we can do it.
I think we can bring it back next
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
I don't think.
We don't have to solve all the particulars.
I know, but we
the
gotta
point-
have a next
The
step.
issue here is that this site is an anchor to any major
I totally,
change here.
I get it.
No, but that's just, it's not a frustration. That's just what we need to say.
I know, but I want to know what we
And
do.
identify the larger areas
Yes.
of where
We want to
this could
take
be.
advantage of what there
So
is
we're
to
going to-
take advantage
So
of.
we're going to have a starred agenda item for next month, and we're going to put all this together, and we're going to make a resolution next month.
Yeah, and I don't
Okay.
think it should be too detailed. I
That's
think it
fine.
needs to
I'm
be
not
more of an
saying, I
open-
just want to.
If you want to send a draft, maybe we can work on it
Okay.
together. But again, this is something that I've been talking about here for a while, and I just wrote it down on something else we were reading. But this is the whole idea of design excellence. I don't
Yes.
understand how it is waterfront project, the best architects in the world or internationally, the best creative minds, who creativity doesn't always translate as more money. It means a creative solution. And many times those can be less expensive. Who's to say? I just think that's like and it shouldn't be motivated by real estate. It should be motivated by the city of New York and the people of New York, the tourists there. And this is really an urban living room. And we should treat it. So anyway, I wrote here in the design excellence, more affordable housing, adaptive reuse when possible, because all these zoning incentives, listen, we want to see some creative adaptive
But
reuse,
there's
maybe
nothing
not
to-
here.
That's the whole beauty of it. There's nothing to adaptively reuse.
And
It's
renovation,
unused
which is the
space.
design of, or new. Again, I was responding to a different subject. And then the last thing is resiliency.
Yeah, reserve.
And these are like no-brainers. And this is not something extravagant to ask for. It's just something worthy of the site. And it's not, this isn't for amateurs. I need to get somebody really good in there and blow our socks off.
Is this something Michael Kimmelman would write about in the Times?
Well, I think we need to work first before we even do that. We haven't even articulated it.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
And the opening point
out
to
there.
all of this is saying, hey, this site that's transferring hands a decade early, which is what's happening, that was not shared with anybody, that this was happening, that this is an opportunity that it's accelerated here to re-envision an area that is dramatically changed where the principal property owners
That's the
are government.
It's also the deindustrialization of the.
Yeah,
site,
and
it's-
that's part of the change in the use,
Right.
right? But the government is the primary landowner here.
And it's in
And-
prime Manhattan. It's not in some place where, you know.
It's just still, that's an
But I think we can
opportunity of
articulate
bringing
it as far
together.
as a journalist should be
groups.
able to grasp. What we're talking about is not
Yeah, but we
revolutionary.
haven't even
It's just
put it
higher-
into, we've talked about it now at 5 different meetings.
Mhm.
And we have
Mhm.
not in at all articulated any of this
Okay.
and on paper, right?
Well,
Which
excuse me,
is.
Carter, EDC took 2 years. We've only had 5 months. I think we're doing a
But
good
what I'm
job.
saying is that we haven't, we've been in a responsive as opposed to this is a major change. in
Yeah, it's only been a few
community.
months, you know, since
And
February.
That's what I'm saying. I
if you
think
recall,
I
we
think we're doing a
started
good
talking
job.
about this site without knowing.
It's
And-
been on my list a long time.
And in response to
So-
Frederica's question about starting with the eliciting the support of our electeds, yes, that's what we're, in a way, what we're preparing for. So it's kind of like, I'm not saying exactly script them, but we need to go to them with something,
Something really concrete.
position that, you know, what we've been discussing here for a few months.
This is the beginning of the.
The other thing I wanted to add was, in terms of architecture firms we could reach out to potentially are the ones behind, that Big Bend proposal and the one behind the Penn Studio redesign. So they were like very public about their, proposed designs for those 2 spaces. I can send them to you
What was the
again.
first one?
The first one is, behind Big Bend, OEO Studio. And then the one behind Penn Station redesign was Alex Washburn.
Odo Studio, is that the landscape designer for the High Line?
I'm not sure.
No.
It's OEO Studio,
Spell
the
that?
Big Bend.
I forget the.
No,
What's the Big Bend?
It was that proposal for like
It's,
the horseshoe-shaped infinity
It
building.
wasn't owned by Sweden.
Oh, my God.
I'm not saying that's where we should go.
Oh, okay. Now, Big Bend.
Architecture firms that were.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Designs and,
Thank you.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little early before we're going to architecture firms.
Well, because they were soliciting
Yeah.
our names, so I'm
The
just
space,
sharing.
Right.
saying that there can be a larger vision
We need to
here.
identify the
And
opportunity.
there's a lot of options of
That's-
where
right,
the
that's
public. benefit comes
OIIO
from this.
studio. Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's the purpose of reusing public space.
Right,
is
the
to
longest
have
building in the
public
world.
benefit. And it's interesting in looking at this because part of the deindustrialization
Mhm.
also could enhance our waterfront.
Right.
You know, by just a slight move of the
the
highway,
highway.
you know, can transform.
Especially with all the bike lanes and everything.
Forget the bike lanes, just use of the waterfront. That's a crunch point where it gets super narrow,
Yeah.
you know? And so I just think there's a lot to just open up the discussion.
It's almost like a portal that connects in all
Yeah.
ways, across the island, across to New Jersey. It's like, this is a
Across.
crosswalks of the highways. I mean, this is a very interesting,
Is there another one of?
But-
underutilized.
But one of the nice
Okay.
things is that once you open up the larger idea, the rest of the parts make sense. At least to me, that's why I am able to see this, to me, and maybe just sketching it out, just, you suddenly can see very quickly, oh, if I did this, look at all these other things that just naturally fall into place.
Well, we're
Right.
still, our objective is still affordable housing
Yes,
in the end, and so we do need a chunk of
Well, that's
footprint to
well,
make it
big enough,
feasible.
a big
right,
enough.
but I think that what the it's not just affordable housing, it's creating more space for better design, which allows for more housing. And because
Yeah,
this
fair enough.
is public land, the exchange in getting to that end can include that.
I think we should.
It is, it's just,
So I-
the land isn't that huge, I mean, you still need a, but
I know.
So I think we have,
we're done, yeah.
yeah, I think we have a lot of ideas. We'll put this on the
Right.
agenda for next month.
Good.
Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is the Charter Revision Commission, unless there's any other comments from the public or other CB2 members online.
Anyhow.
Frederica had a question, but I'm not sure
Let's see her.
for the chat. Okay.
Does anyone actually know where Eric stands in the current site plan?
Okay, so
We can answer, yeah, he's made a few comments. He's made a few comments.
all right, so let's go into the Charter Revision Commission. So this is an item we have on our agenda. We are also going to discuss this next month as well. But there are two commissions with sort of, I don't know, necessarily competing, but visions of the charter revision. So one is the mayoral Charter Revision Commission, and then the other is city council-led Charter Revision Commission. In terms of timelines, we do have, we did inquire what was the final date that we could provide comments for the charter revision. We heard back from the mayor's Charter Revision Commission, which is, I believe, July 7th.
Yep.
Is the last date that we can provide written comments. So that would line up with our meeting next month, as well as full board next month if we have a resolution. Mark, did we hear back from the city council? Do they have the same?
They're the ones that connected us to the mayoral.
Okay, so the July 7th is common between the two?
Well,
It's our comments effectively for.
effectively, the
for
real
all.
charter revision commission is the mayoral one.
Okay,
Even the city council is in fact trying to influence the mayors.
mayors, okay.
Right, because of that preemption thing.
okay. So, we were trying to get George Janes to help us in terms of looking at the issues of the charter revision that affect land use. But, you know, I think we can also take a look at just the specific portions. I mean, when we take a look at the issues that affect us, they're looking at shortening the ULURP timelines. Right now, we have a 90-day timeline. I think they are trying to recommend a shorter
60 days.
60-day, which would compress our review period. And then what are the other specific items that are relevant for
This might be helpful.
that there?
At the very bottom
Yeah,
there.
that's- Okay,
And then those are the notes that I've.
Yeah, yeah.
great. I think they were also looking at exempting certain types of developments from the standard ULURP process. So if there were small rezonings, it would be able to bypass some of the ULURP process that's currently in place. And there's also issues of looking at revisiting our member deference. I think that the mayor's revision committee is looking to basically get rid of mayor deference, is my understanding, right?
Member deference.
Member deference.
Yeah.
Isn't member deference the members?
Hmm?
Isn't member deference the other members choosing to do that?
Right,
That's,
I mean, it
right,
says
I
it-
mean, that's not what I didn't understand.
that's right.
Well, also, the city council report is pushing forward the 197A planning process.
Right.
Which is much more, community, which is community-based. And we did actually have a 197A plan for the waterfront. The Doors D they're put together, I don't know, 25 or 30 years ago. But city planning rejected it. And I'm not really sure how many 197As ever made it citywide. So they're saying that they should be promoted. That's a good thing. But our experience at CB2 is that we put a lot of work into it. The land use committee put a lot of work into it. I wasn't on the committee or the board, and it just went fizzled. So if they could put some more teeth into that, that would be good.
Has anyone had a chance to look through the?
Yeah, I have a question if anybody else wanted to comment on this. This is about member deference.
Mhm.
About whether if it's your district, everyone sort of goes along with you.
With
Right.
the local council members?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I just wondered what everybody thought about that. If it's a municipal feudalism, as somebody called it.
Well, here's Ed Koch is saying, it gives legislative legitimacy to the NIMBY reaction that now threatens to block any socially responsible land use policy.
Back then, huh? How far we've come. All right, well, I just thought because
Land use paralysis, run the risk of land use paralysis.
we had that with Elizabeth Street Garden, and it was sort of like a done deal the minute one person decided.
Mhm.
And that may have been a way to help save it back then.
Well, what happened, that's a good example too, because other districts might not understand, they say might not understand the issue as well.
Right.
As the
Yeah.
local
But,
council member, right?
You should be able to deal with that.
Well, we are living in a more, information rich. It's like I
Yeah.
can imagine an area without actually.
Elizabeth Street Garden was member deference without sunshine. You gotta keep that in mind.
But that's.
Nobody knew about it until it was done. It was actually the reverse.
You gotta start writing for us in the paper or something.
But right, wasn't that in the reverse? We didn't know that site
Well, that
was
seems to
Yeah.
be normal.
towards housing.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
We found out by chance,
That's right, after the fact. So it's actually not.
right? But then as it went through city council, it would be Chin who was deferred to.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, like that she had included as part of Essex Crossing, right, as an outlier
Right.
site.
Yeah.
Came.
But we found out after. Is that the timing?
Yeah, I mean, it's not dissimilar to the parking lot across from the 5th precinct, which is included in the Soho NoHo rezoning. And even though that site had already been discussed before.
Right.
It was outside the district.
So, and then,
Community board district.
but on a different subject.
Okay.
I was just thinking that all of these comments in here, again, there's absolutely nothing that encourages anyone to do anything creative or above the absolute minimum of housing or design. And so again, we don't have the benefit of creative solutions. And I don't know why we don't have something in everything we build or require. It has to come in early. Design is like the first thing.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if we can keep harping on it or if anybody agrees with me. That's all.
Well, we have to keep harping on it. If it's important, we just have to.
Well, it is key for me because all I see is like suburban proposals that don't belong, in my mind, at the gateway between two historic districts or or whatever importance we place on it is not reflected in the design. And it isn't one thing or another. It's simply, talent and abilities. It's not just.
You're recommending that they have a more explicit.
I think they should develop a system. Well, I am taking it directly out of the GSA,
Okay.
and they have it all
They have a
worked out.
guideline, right? I mean,
Pardon?
they have a design.
They have a design excellence, and it's evaluated by certain people, and it's incorporated into it. Now, it doesn't maybe have to be that intense.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not, the absolute number one flashy architect that's reviewing.
Right.
Could be something else, but at least it's part of the process.
Ah,
Well, I remember you had similar comments for 388 Hudson, right? When we
Completely
had
lost
that-
opportunity.
Right.
Totally lost and unfair. And because it didn't benefit the people who were really trying to provide something for. It could have solved, could have made it much better. But everybody has that in their interest.
Right.
But I'm sure there was another motive involved in it too.
yeah. Well, I'm most concerned, or one of the things I'm most concerned about is the compressed timeline for ULURP. Because that really is.
Gansevoort?
No, ULURP, in the charter revision.
Yeah.
90 to 60 days.
Yes, I mean, doesn't give community boards very much time on a complicated issue.
That's the idea.
Exactly. And then sometimes the borough president has given us a few days out of their 90, we've been able to sort of share time on things that are a little more, particularly Gail was generous about that. Oh, you can have another 5 days to match your community board schedule and I'll take it off my time. And that was, when you have only 60, not 90, that little give. is-
Also, we're volunteers.
But haven't we
That's not-
found in our experience that it's not the time that we have that creates the issues with all of these projects, because the community board has such limited time. We don't create the hurdles. And an
No.
example is outdoor dining, which is absurd. There was so much talk about community board time, and yet it takes 300 and some odd days to refer an application to, 324 on average to refer to us. And we, I think, have met in our time schedule always. Any land use, we take it and we dispose of it, right? And
We do.
utilize the time, and the 60 days is allowed for us. We've utilized that through 2 meetings, right? Because we are volunteers on.
But we're only gonna get 30.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that we've used that time well by considering it. We don't lollygag in that time
Oh,
and
no.
do nothing.
Okay, yeah.
It's referred, it's scheduled, we put it on
Good
the meeting
about it.
calendar for us. And I think that that's something that's important to articulate, because it seems like the inference is that there's foot dragging, which there's not. There's actually just scrambling because we don't have the resources. There's no land use assistance on any matters. There's no professional
And they're supposed to be.
assigned
We're supposed
to the
to get it.
boards. There's nobody to help us, do this in 30 days. We don't
And we
have
need
staffing
time
of,
for the public.
local land use staff, of hiring somebody specific. So if these changes if they were to be implemented, should include, funding so that appropriate input can be given
In
on
terms of
those.
access to professionals?
Yeah, access to professionals to comment. Because the concept of obstructionism is getting to be a little bit boring to read about, because it's just really not the real issues that are happening on the ground here. And going through the Soho NoHo rezoning is a case in point of really talking about the wrong issues. And we see, just what we heard last month, right? Luxury housing projects, on-site housing and through commercial conversion, it's like.
Have you read Andrew's report?
I have, and that puts some.
Are you on Andrew
into
Berman's
it,
list?
and,
No, I haven't seen
We
it.
have to forward
and
it to you.
that puts real numbers to things, but it's also, we even knew in the mix, that one site with, which is now gonna be the Chobani headquarters in Bowery. There was no interest in changing their minds over a massive rezoning. They just went forward and said, we're gonna build a commercial building because it's, what I want to do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, Peter's raising his hand too, by the way.
but I do think that that's a comment we should be making, is that there needs to be more funding if there's any accelerated timelines on a community board level.
Well, we should ask for, we should be getting that anyway, whether it's,
No, but it should be tied specifically.
no, I understand what
If
you're
land
saying.
use, commenting on land use policies is one of the primary important functions, right? We should, if they're gonna be accelerating anything, there should be more resources available.
And I don't want you to think that I think that we are lollygagging. I'm just thinking, this is ridiculous to have such a compressed.
But if that is what is offered, right?
No, I
That's what's
understand, I understand. I
happening.
just want to clarify my
The
point.
reason is that we don't have somebody on staff to say, oh, here's a proposal. I'm gonna devote the next 3 days to figuring this out and I will turn it around. Because
Yeah,
the city is capable of doing that.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we're
yeah.
not, right? And, you know,
yeah.
and also as the first
Pete wanted to-
response, we don't know, we're the first line. When it comes into the mix, everybody else gets to learn about it on our dime, on our time.
Right.
And so that's another problem.
Do you want to get the comment from, I think?
Yeah, Pete, if you want to give public comment, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I really second Anita's comment about excellence in design should be a focus. It shouldn't just be some unspoken thing that maybe gets attended to. Really important. And also, I second Carter's comment that the community dragging its feet and getting in the way it's far more than boring. It's a lie. And it's the narrative that is being pushed against the community. Carl Weisbrod and Alicia Glenn wrote a whole article about it today in the Daily News.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the community. So I think what y'all need to do is look at each and every one of these city charter things and ask, what is good in this for the community? Because what you're going to find is they're removing things that the community now has. There's no legislated member deference. That happens because that's how the city council works.
Yeah.
For them now to create a law in opposition to that it's just wrong. It's a wrong framing of what goes on. Now, you may not like it that everybody gets in line for a city council member's thing. I don't like it all the time either. But to put it out as a narrative that is something that needs to be re-legislated is just so weird and incorrect. So please look at all these things in the manner to see what's good for the community. You will find, and we found this during Soho NoHo, that there was a charter revision about ULURP that was passed, and they didn't follow it. And when we brought that up to Gail as the borough president and said, why is this not being followed? She shut down and wouldn't even respond to it because she had voted for that change and failed to make it instituted. So just be careful. I think CB2 needs to come out full-throated. These charter revisions are not good for the people or for the community. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Pete makes a very good argument that the member deference is not, it's tradition, right? It's not, there's nothing.
Yeah, he's
Well,
right.
it's also how we elect our local electeds.
The whole reason for having.
Why have a local elected if they're not there
They don't
to
have
support you?
Right, if they can't
But
get
so
the
it's
support.
not really a revision that really means much, because it probably will continue just the way it
No one's
has.
forcing.
Well, we're also
forcing
a
it.
large
It's
city,
changing.
right? That's made up of 5 boroughs. I mean, this didn't start off as one city, and you expect a local interest. And
And sometimes.
you know, allowing,
works.
I very much understand, you know, I think there are other conversations to be had, but, you know, tying the hands of our elected officials is
Yeah.
not.
No.
We need our local,
Not
look
the
at
way
the
to
experience
do it.
with the city of Yes
With-
for housing. You need your local.
If you tie the hands because you don't like the current politicians, you don't allow the future politician to have the freedom for greatness, right? I mean, so I'm sure there's more eloquent ways of saying that, but that seems to be what everybody wants to do here is, you know, limit.
Yes.
I'm just, and I'm not very good at all this bureaucratic thing. I don't even think this way, but I'm curious about the, you know, the housing and land use, and it goes into all these details about whether it should be this or that. When,
What are you talking about in terms of?
like ULURP, and should it be shorter and, or the deference? And I'm just thinking that the criteria somehow, the starting point is part of the problem, because there's no analysis of whether there's resiliency. You know, we're responsible for thinking long-term for our city. It's not this minute and it's got to be done fast because we can get it in 13 weeks. And that's not the kind of solution that's good for our community.
So the focus essentially. Of what-
Exactly, whether it's, again, resiliency or reuse or finding
Right.
ways that are long-term design.
Benefits for the.
You know, when they talk about shortening the ULURP, it's very little, you know, it's not like, you know, they're saying, oh, it's so long, it causes these delays, you know. The ULURP isn't what causes delays, you know, you're in this 10-year process.
That's true, right. We've never really, that's never held up a project.
No.
Right,
You know,
and we've
and-
always met the deadlines.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting about this is that this follows on City of Yes, which has changed a lot of, changed zoning and made some things automatic, so that some things which would have gone through you, you know, 2 years ago, won't
As
go
of
through it
right,
anymore.
right.
So this
Right.
change is being done
the
on
back
top of
that.
On
another
top of
change,
it,
which we
right.
haven't even been able to analyze.
Right, we haven't fully absorbed all those changes yet,
Yeah.
right?
So design shouldn't be done on a speedway. You know, I mean, it just isn't that. You have to have enough time in the beginning. After that, you can, you know, whatever they call it, fast track it or something. But without something worth building,
Mhm.
or long-term solution, you miss out.
We just saw that right in that earlier discussion about Gansevoort, right? I mean, we've
Yes.
missed out on.
So I think we want to get down to what is, and it's really because the client is the community, not the land developer and,
Right.
and so on. So the criteria needs to be for people to enjoy their city, to benefit from it, get more affordable, whatever. But that requires a little more than just making it shorter and fewer and less controls. I mean, they'd like to get rid of it.
That's a good point. Yeah, a lot of these complaints seem to be from the point of view of a developer, right? In terms of an impediment to, you know, this is standing in the way of.
They're deciding how much money they need to earn to be
Right.
bothered.
Right,
And there's something more to the equation
more
than
to the
that.
discussion, right?
And maybe we don't agree that they need to make that much money, for example. You know, but they're being asked to do it. So it's not, that's not the best use of the land necessarily. It's the best use for, you know, whoever is designing it
Right.
with their priorities in mind.
Right, and land, which is a very, very scarce resource for us in CB2.
Yes.
You know, some of these things are different in the boroughs. We have such a density.
I know.
Right. You know, a lot of, when I look just through this and I was reading through, a lot of this is taking away the sunshine from a lot of
That's
things.
right.
Oh,
And-
Taking away
and-
sunshine.
And I think that that's, and then on the flip side, that made me think about it, was just like, oh, we're trying to increase voter turnout, but we're gonna let you know less and be able to participate less in other areas.
So why would people
Get to see it
care?
faster, right?
What's the benefit there? And I think that is also, change doesn't mean you make people change. And we have a lot of longstanding communities in the city, and that forcing change without a public process is what drives away members of our community, and is generally the less privileged that you argue that it will help them the most, but at the same time, it takes away the most because you're not able to come together. I mean, that's an age-old problem, right, in the city, but that's just seems to be it's just switching around language a bit to sort of use it for one side or the other. But the biggest thing is it's just like taking away public comment and sunshine and information and.
Well, it's like moving quickly doesn't allow for any reflection. It doesn't allow for any feedback. So there's like this added pressure, reduced regulation, reduced process, faster, and it's not incorporating what we're looking for, if you will. It's just moving the zoning without maybe considering the historic preservation or the resiliency or whatever else there is.
I'm gonna ask Mark a question.
Yeah.
Mark, have other
Program.
community boards been talking about charter revision yet? Have you heard any comments from other?
CB8 is getting George to come to one of their meetings, I think at the end of this month, just with a PowerPoint, not with a full memo. CB3 and I have been talking because we'd like to, see if we can share resources to team up. I think we probably need one more board, or maybe we can join in with CB8. I've reached out to Will to do that, to see if we can, even if we just have his guidance in a PowerPoint as opposed to a memo with citations, might be instructive. If I could offer one thought, or actually two thoughts about what you're talking about in terms of timing and process. I think that the thing that's markedly missing from all of this discussion is that the pre-certification period is unlimited and often can take years, so that the project that you get to review, in which you're absolutely right, this is one more step in taking review away from community boards. City of Yes went almost all the way there. But this would effectively take away that process. But so much of that is etched in the pre-certification period. And then the other thing to remember is that when they're talking about consolidating or reducing the Euler period, what they're talking about doing is conflating the community board and the borough president's review. And for most, and remember that we have the obligation to hold the public hearing. Right. And then the borough president has then he or she can hold their public hearing independently, but they don't have to, and they often don't, because the community board does that and does it well. So what you're really doing is not at all unlike outdoor dining. They're making the community board review and the borough president review coterminous, and the council member review coterminous, so that you get only one crack at this without having the expertise of the borough president's staff reviewing what the community board has produced.
Oh my God.
In order to have a multifaceted approach and analysis of what's going on. So you're depriving, and then if you put on top of that this member deference thing, which essentially would give some troika of the borough president, the speaker of the council, and the mayor, the power to overrule a council member deference denial, then essentially what are we doing?
Not good.
Anyway, I'm sorry to take that.
No, that's very.
Even in the report, it says that the community board review generally takes 60 days. And so now they want to completely consolidate the community board and the borough review period to 60 days.
Yeah.
So that just doesn't make any sense.
One of the things that could help with that time frame is that they can only be referred on the first of the month, for example, or whatever.
I know.
No, but I mean that because they have all this freedom beforehand,
Yeah,
but that actually allows, to plan around that.
yeah.
Just, I mean, because we always get, right, these off, that's always the negotiation, right?
Right.
When are they going to release it?
When, you can wait a week? Oh, thanks for waiting a week, because then we can fit it all in.
That's right.
I mean, that discussion's been
sense,
happening for
yeah.
years. So or that there be a notice requirement that a certain number of days before it's referred, they have to give you notice that it is going to be referred. That's another way of working around that. If there's a lot of other options, but taking away information and discussion is not a good solution.
And having 3 people override in 51 member, I forget, is it 51 city council members?
Well, we've had some bad luck on all of that anyway. The powers, if you don't agree with that, it could be really devastating because it'll happen all across the board, the same thing. But Mark said something else, which was that it's the early phase of the pre-whatever.
Certification.
Yes.
Years, yeah.
Where there's the potential to have some impact, although again, our track record has been pretty bad. But, rather than to see something so far in that it's a done deal, is I don't know if there's anything to say about that.
I don't think you mean that we've done a bad job. We've just been boxed in, right? I mean, when you say our track record is bad,
No, they haven't listened to us. That's what,
exactly.
our work has been actually very impressive because
Yeah, I just want to be
the
sure.
amount of effort and intelligence, and I mean, I can't say enough as far as that goes, but it's pretty frustrating and sad if people are writing notes and going, oh, that's interesting, and then not a thing changes. That's odd. So again, maybe there should be a law that they have to listen to the community board.
Oh, that would be a great law.
Oh, yeah. Why did they create us if they're not going to listen?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense either.
But point of my question, Mark, was also, are there any other community boards that you know of who are being, looking at this with a critical or negative eye?
The only 3 that I sent a request to talk about the George Janes opportunity to all 12 Manhattan boards. I haven't reached out to the Friends of the Future of Community Boards, that 5-borough group. But I will in our next meeting, which I think is tomorrow. And only 8 and 3 have in any way responded.
Okay.
I also ended up speaking to 9 because I mistakenly thought that 8 was 9. So, and they said, no, we're not looking at it.
Actually, they specifically said they're not.
Yutha said that, when I said, oh, I hear you have a PowerPoint in the works, and she said, not me. So that's,
Yeah, okay.
As a matter of reading this report, it's written very casually, nothing is explicitly said as, here are the things that we're
Just a
looking at.
recommendation.
Yeah, it's very much these are things that could potentially be considered. So is that, do we have to go in and kind of parse what they're recommending and then basically make a statement on whether we agree with it or not?
Yes, I think we do need to parse out what they would want to turn into an actual.
I know, this is dangerous.
I think we do need to parse out their, I don't want to call it marketing language, but their soft language.
Right.
In terms of what it would mean in terms of an actual policy change.
Okay.
And then I think we want to provide a written comment. We agree with it, we disagree with it.
But isn't it only a few parts that are
Right, there's lots of other parts that do not affect.
I just put housing in the land use section.
Yeah.
Right, that's a good point.
It's okay. So CB8 in Manhattan has a voting reform and charter revision task force. And they are drafting the CB8 testimony for the charter commission hearing. And then
That's it in Manhattan that I was able to find. Probably obviously you've had conversations or having conversations with Bronx. CB8 has testified March 4th at a hearing already. You know, there's different ones in
Different boroughs.
in different boroughs. Brooklyn CB4, they're testified on May 6th in the Bed-Stuy one. And then the Brooklyn CB6 district manager is actually on the council charter commission. So that would be somebody interesting to reach out to. And then Queen CB2 had public testimony on the board, their board's position on January 29th.
Are they positive or negative? Do you, did any sense of that yet?
You can go on the CB8 website and look at the minutes of their meeting, which I think was yesterday.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Hi.
So does that answer your question, Arturo, about?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just because it wasn't explicit and I did find the bits and pieces in terms of like the 3 official body and the recommendation for 60 to 90. I just wanted to be clear that that was the stylistic.
That seems
that they
to
were
be what it
doing.
is.
And again, you know, we can ask a pointed question to George James, you know, to see if he could tease out, you know, to help us parse out that language from, you know, what they're saying in the flowery, like 100-page report, and parse it out to what would it mean for us in terms of the land use and housing sections.
Well, and are there any other committees of CB2 that are trying to comment? Are there any, I mean, I just looked at land use and housing. Are there any other sections that impact the work of other committees in our community board?
I think we need to look, I think we should bring that up at exec on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to bring that up because I don't, to my knowledge, there's no one else actively in campus besides land use on the land use portion.
Okay, okay. And so it's Bronx 3, Brooklyn 4, Q2, and Brooklyn 6. The ones. Okay, I wrote it down quickly. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then July 7th is the last public hearing on this.
So
Is there also maybe something that should say, now this might be a revolutionary idea. Housing and land use. Is there something that says affordable housing should be
on public.
guaranteed or blah, 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 something?
I didn't see anything.
There was public land. There is nothing that says anything like that.
I don't think I saw anything.
Suggestion.
So
About public land.
Public land, yeah,
Yeah,
there
was
is.
something on
Yeah,
public
but it
land.
doesn't say that.
No, I'm just saying, this might be our
in terms of,
opportunity.
I think you're asking like, is there like a requiring or recommending 100% affordable, like that type
Well,
of
look, we have gotten nothing, no guarantees,
commitments, right?
no, for a long term. It's so wishy-washy, we really are not gonna end up with very much. That's the reality.
Right.
And here, if they're creating, because it even just, I'm picking up on what Arturo was saying, but here it says addressing the housing crisis requires a range of reforms, and then they go through every reform under the sun, and then they say, but zoning, that's where we can really make it easy for them. But it has no requirements that are linked back to what is supposedly motivating all of this.
Okay, actually, is there a section that talks about
Page
the,
48.
okay,
Yeah, what it's saying essentially is that the answer to the problem with using public land is to expedite the process, not to create an obligation to make it all.
right, it's still about the speed of the process, right?
What's the rush? I mean, if it's vacant, it's been vacant for a long time probably, and now it's a way of shoehorning it through
Mhm.
with the red button saying affordable housing, but then there's no requirements. So, hey,
Yeah.
I'm on to that.
Definitely seems like less sunshine to even say exempting certain dispositions from an additional public auction process and reduce procedure for acquisitions meeting certain criteria.
Yeah.
So it's like less time for the community to react, less visibility, less just public process.
Yeah.
Right, there's gonna be ultimately less applications that even come before the community.
They're trying to eliminate all of them, actually.
Right.
I think that's really the direction we're going in.
And this, what Mark, page 36 in the first,
The mayors.
it talks about what Mark was saying about the pre-certification. I mean, this is pages of deferring to the local congressperson. I mean, this is a big part of this. I'm just sort of reading it now. All right, so we'll read through this
Yes,
more carefully for next meeting.
right.
Okay.
And it is definitely an agenda item for next meeting, and then we will craft the resolution
And vote on it.
Yeah.
after that meeting.
And all of this is in the Google Drive, for land use.
Right, but we
Yeah.
wanted to get this conversation
Yeah.
started early,
Yeah.
Can you share
so
that?
that we could, you know,
Can you share that?
start percolating these ideas.
Yeah, the link for the drive,
Yes, exactly.
the whole drive, not,
And there also, yes, there is a link, and I know Donna, you had asked,
yeah.
there is a link for the whole drive now for land use, so.
Oh, okay. I don't
Yes,
have it.
which-
Yeah.
So we don't have to keep hunting down
And
individual.
then, exactly, finding the
And maybe-
email, hoping you can find the email.
Yeah, so we can forward that through so that everyone has it.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, so.
all right. So any other comments on this? And again, we'll have this as the agenda item for next month. Then the other agenda item is the review of the final report. So I understand that there was, first, I know, Archer, you're not feeling well, I think this week. And I think what I'm hearing is that we would benefit from getting the report and putting this on the agenda for next month so that we can circulate the final version of the report. Yes, exactly, because we weren't able to get that out before this meeting, so the timing just didn't work out.
She sent it in, do we have it?
She sent us a final report, but it's not,
Not quite up to this.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we would benefit from another
iteration.
iteration of that. So we will table that.
Yeah, I sent you a few comments the
Right.
other day.
Yeah, I said this one, yeah.
Right, Katie and I have seen one of the drafts that we specifically asked for, but we'll get let's give her and Lauren the benefit to do one more iteration, and then we'll get that sent out to the committee.
Okay.
In terms of new business, I think you wanted to raise new business for the rent
Yes, you know,
guidelines.
the Rent Guidelines Board has put out its recommendation, and usually the recommendation becomes the final piece, and they're quite high. Am I remembering?
The percentage increase, right?
For 1 year is 4.7.
One and the two.
2 year is over 7. And so, you know, if we wanted to, we could have a resolution criticizing it and saying that that's high. It won't affect the vote, I'm sure. You know, I'm on many other boards, and I'm on the board of Tenants and Neighbors, and the executive director of Tenants and Neighbors, Hannah Aquino, is on the Rent Guidelines Board. So I discussed this with her, and she said, well, it won't affect the vote. I mean, the vote's done, but if
But if we want it to be on record.
if we wanted to be on record, we could be on record criticizing this very high
I mean, we
increase.
know that Chris and Eric have, spoken
I
on
actually
it.
don't know.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
Have they?
I actually don't know, so.
Oh, I thought,
You think Chris has spoken back?
maybe.
End of our agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Are we nearing the end?
You're nearing the
Am I-
end, yes, so, so yeah, we just wanted to have that
So they say you might
discussion
as well
on
go on
the.
record, but you're not going to do anything.
Yes, if we want to go on record, we can.
So do we want, what
We
other
haven't
committee
normally gone
members?
on record, I don't think, but we could if we
I would be
like.
happy to go
Yeah.
on the record, yeah.
I think we should.
Yeah, I don't think we have in the past, but yeah,
Well, this is so big,
yeah.
you know,
this
it's
is-
different.
this
When
is-
it's 1%, nobody's really thinking, but
Right.
suddenly 7.5%, that's a lot.
And given like.
When there's inflation in general.
Exactly,
as well.
given the
Right.
economic
Yeah.
situation that people keep talking about, you know, like this is something that people are feeling across like the country,
Mhm.
in our community, in the state. I think it's a good time to make that
Yeah.
comment.
You know, even, some of the 22 elected officials from Manhattan have signed on to the rent freeze, so that people are really
Mm.
critical. Okay, would you like me to circulate a draft? I think I have it at home already. I
There's
think
already, okay, cool.
I started drafting something in case, because I said, I didn't bring any paper with me, because I thought it would be.
Yeah, because I mean, even looking at some charts that they have online of historical rent increases, I mean, it's
It's
completely out,
very high, yeah.
completely out of scale, yeah.
And
Hearing
it's
that-
not that there haven't been other rent increases before.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
It's been on top of an increase on top of an increase. That's why some people are advocating the freeze, because there've been too many increases.
Exactly. Okay, so we have a vote on that?
Can we take a vote?
Okay, all in favor?
Yep.
Any opposed? Okay, great. And no abstentions, no
abstentions.
refusals? Okay, okay,
And so you'll circulate it.
yeah.
Okay.
Vote to.
All right. Does anyone else have any new business?
No,
All right.
okay.
So we
Started raining?
adjourn this
Tell us no one
meeting.
walking with an umbrella.
Yes, we're
Adjourn.
adjourning.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
you.
Good night, Stella.
Thank you.